All right, guys, welcome to the Liberty Expert Podcast. Well, I'm mobile today for the first time, so hopefully this works out. I'm here with Takota Coen, manager of Cohen Farms, which is a awesome permaculture farm, restorative farm, regenerative farm. We're going to get more into that in a second. But what really caught my attention about Takota's story is that him and his family were threatened with jail time and a fine for doing consenting activity, selling meat and produce that people wanted, that they knew what it was about. And so I'm here to get his story and find out what we can do to help the idea of sovereignty over one's food. Not just sovereignty for growing it, but sovereignty for the consumers who want to consume the type of produce and products that Cohen Farms produces and farms like it. So Takota, thanks for welcoming here. Thank you for the delicious lunch, actual organic food, not the kind of stuff that you get in the grocery store, but stuff that is truly organic. We're going to talk a little bit about that, and thank you for your hospitality, showing me around your farm. I showed up on the wrong day, folks. I showed up a day early. I caught him while he was basically milking his cows, and he's been gracious enough to not kick me off his farm and grab a shotgun and run me out of Dodge, but make me a nice coffee and show me around. So thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming out. It's a pleasure to chat with you. So
awesome. So let's get into your story here, because the video I saw, and I think I saw it a couple days ago, and apparently this lady that made me aware of your story, I think she's probably the same lady that sent you our platform that you seem to enjoy. You know, we've been talking quite a bit. You read the same authors. You have this very similar outlook on life. It's been kind of amazing to find someone that simpatico like that. But talk a little bit about your story here on Cohen Farms and what you're going through with the government.
Yeah, so we've been farming organically for 30 years now, and most of that was selling into the commodity market. And after years of doing that, and just always getting the short end of the stick with, contractors or having signed contracts for producing an X amount and then not working out and all the stuff, my parents basically decided to shut the farm down for a year to try to kind of regroup. And we moved away for a year, came back, and started the farm up from scratch again. And during that time, we realized that, like the only way that we can, maintain financial sustainability on a relatively small farm, Alberta, we've got about 250 acres that we own and another 100 acres that we manage. It's just a small farm here. The only way we could maintain sustainability was to sell direct market to our consumers, which is a totally different experience for us. Like we'd always sold into.
And why is selling to the consumer directly more profitable? Is it because the middleman, I guess, takes a cut? Or?
Yeah, well, I mean, the there's that, but there's also we used to raise, organic grains, organic pigs, organic beef for producers, and we had, basically one or two people that bought all of our stuff. And so when that one or two people decided that, well, we don't want your stuff anymore, or we can get it somewhere else, even if we had a signed contract with them, they just walk away.
Right.
And so part of it is like, yeah, you can be a price, maker, not a price taker.
Right.
And it allows you to engage in basically free market. But more than anything, it's like if I've got 100 customers and two of them walk away, I don't care. I got a wait list now.
Right.
So that was a big reason behind the going direct market. But as we did that, we actually started going to farmers markets and talking to our customers and asking, like, what do you want? Like what can, like, we're producing eggs and pork and beef, but what else do you want? Like what kind of cuts do you want? All this stuff, as opposed to just selling to some guy where we don't know where it's going.
Right.
We started to have really meaningful conversations with.
So you have a relationship directly with the people that are consuming your food, and you're trying to tailor to their needs
to see what they want. And one of the things we kept hearing over and over and over again was people were focused on the nutrient density of the food, and they were focused on the environmental sustainability of the food and the ethics.
Yeah,
those are like the three biggest things that kept coming up for consumers, and so obviously, like, those are also things that resonated with us, and actually the reason why we farm the way we farm is for that, producing the most nutrient-dense food for ourselves, farming, environmentally, and doing it as ethically as possible. But we started to we started to realize that within the current system, and kind of operating under the rules, we weren't able to give our customers what they wanted. So, give me an example of that is like another farmer that I know in British Columbia, he says as a farmer, we've got a lot of people that are basically that have the keys to our business. In that, like for me, when I take an animal to a butcher shop, and I'm dealing with the customer, and I've asked, what do you want? How do you want this animal processed? What kind of cuts do you want? And then I pass it off to somebody else. It's completely out of my control, and I there's nothing I can do. And one of the problems within the meat processing industry in Alberta, and I think this is pretty common actually across Canada, if not North America, is that there is a massive there's way more demand than there is supply for butchers. And part of the reason that is because it's so expensive to become a butcher because of the regulations and things like that. It's like $2 million to open up a butcher shop, just like a small one now, to make it to code and to have a private bathroom for the inspector when he comes in, and a private office for him, and all these things and stuff like this. And so there's very few people that are starting new butcher shops, and even the ones that are existing, they've been phasing out and trying to sell. Like I think there's like 5 or 6 butcher shops in provincially inspected abattoirs in Alberta right now, and most of them are for sale because nobody wants to be in it. And so as a producer now, there's a 6-month wait list for me to get into a butcher, and once I get if I actually can get in to take my animals there, the butcher doesn't want to be there.
Right.
Like
he definitely doesn't want to do custom orders.
He doesn't want to do anything special. Yeah. And so, we were having difficulty actually getting the cuts that our customers wanted because they're a little bit different, and they wanted to save the organs but on top of that, a lot of our customers have severe health issues. Like we're talking, if they ate meat that wasn't raised on our farm, like one of them is soy allergies is a big problem. Even organic soy is it's mixed into a lot of minerals, a lot of feed additives, and a lot of the rations for almost all the animals. And a lot of our customers are so allergic to soy and the compounds that are a part of it that if they eat an egg or milk or a pork chop that had eaten soy, they can have a reaction from the soy themselves.
Interesting.
And so it became really difficult for us as producers because we are completely soy-free. We're on top of being organic because that's what our customers wanted. And yet when we take our meat to a processing facility, we were getting meat back that wasn't ours.
Oh, geez.
Sometimes we were getting meat back that wasn't even the same species. Like we take a pig in, and there'd be a mix-up, and they get some beef back, or this is a very common thing with all producers that I talk with. They're all struggling with the same thing: is finding good butchers that are honest.
Right.
And that's actually, we've had butchers steal like entire hundreds of pounds of meat from us. Yeah. But it's like, oh, sorry, I lost it.
Yeah. Well, and I relate this back to, I went through a phase there where I was following this guy, Dave Asprey, the Bulletproof podcast. And so I was convinced, okay, I need grass-fed beef, I need grass-fed milk for my diet, right? Mm-hmm. Because there's all these mycotoxins in grain that is GMO produced. Yep. And that gets through the food supply and into my body, and it's creating an inflammatory response, even little low-level brain fog. I was all about operating at a high cognitive level. That was the most important thing to me. So, okay, I'm going to the grocery store. I'm convinced I'm buying grass-fed beef. I'm buying grass-fed butter. Can't find it anywhere. Difficult to find local producers that sell it. Mm-hmm. Find out that it's difficult for them to sell me grass-fed butter. And I can't even import the stuff, the Kerry Gold from Ireland, because supply management has a stranglehold and the dairy farmers have a stranglehold over what we get. So we have to get this food that isn't as nutritious as I want, all because some, bureaucrats and government officials are catering to a special interest group so that they can maintain their profits, and it just has all these negative unintended consequences that affect my health.
Exactly.
Okay, we're here now, and I'm at Cohen Farms, and I have found a farmer that is willing to give me the highest quality beef, grass-fed. No soy, no pesticides, none of this other stuff, no hormones, no antibiotics, done in a super sustainable, regenerative way on a permaculture farm, and I can get butter, I can get all this stuff perfect. Why can't I just buy from you all this stuff that's going to make me healthier and make me live longer and make me more effective?
Yeah.
Tell me, why? What's going on here?
The government says no.
The government says no, that's it.
That's
and this is what you were threatened with jail time for, right?
Yeah. So
you had people like me that wanted this stuff, that were like begging for this stuff, and you were producing it, and your operation is completely transparent. You gave me a complete tour. You give your customers tours, I assume, if they want them. They can see exactly how their food is produced.
I had signed contracts with everyone that I was selling meat to. So coming back to this whole thing, after years of we've gone to almost every butcher within a 2-hour radius of our farm, who's a provincially inspected, abattoir, butcher shop. They're doing everything to the government standard, and every single one of them that we had gone to was either they were poor quality cuts, they were stealing from us, they were giving us meat back that wasn't theirs, or the handling facilities were so atrocious for their animals that it was unethical for us to take our animals there. Right. So, and this comes back to the third reason why people were what they're saying they wanted from us is that there's and there's actually scientific reasons behind why raising and killing animals ethically makes sense. Is that if you've ever been scared, you know that the adrenaline, the cortisol, it's pumping through your body, right? Those are hormones. Those are stress hormones. Yeah. And animals are no different. Yeah. And you can see when an animal is stressed. And as a farmer, when you spend your life raising an animal from birth until finishing, and there's a saying in farming is like, my animals only have one bad day. Right. And it's true. They only have one bad day, but that day is awful. You're getting hauled down the highway in a trailer that they've never been in before, highway speeds to a separate place where they're around animals and people they've never been around before, and so there's no way that you could actually humanely harvest an animal according to the code, right? Right. And so we decided, actually read into the Meat Inspection Act, and found that it's perfectly legal for me as a producer to kill an animal on my farm and then take that animal to a butcher shop and have them process it for me. But it's labeled as uninspected, not for sale. So in the same way that you can go kill a deer or a moose or something like that as a hunter and then take it to a processing facility, because there's two different things. There's abattoirs and there's butcher shops. And they can both be inspected. Abattoirs kill the animals, butcher shops process them. A lot of them do both, some of them just do one. Anyways, we decided, well, hey, if it's legal for me as a producer to do this, if I educate my consumers, why shouldn't they be able to have the same right if they want to do that? Right. So I went to my consumers with this idea. I said, look, like you guys say you want these things. I can't give it to you for these reasons. Here's what I'm proposing. Let's enter into a private agreement where I'll actually rent you land. You become a producer. I'll sell you a live animal. Your animal can be harvested on your land, and then you become a producer and you have the same rights that I do under the Meat Inspection Act. I had signed contracts with every single person I was selling meat to. And we did this for 3 or 4 years. It was fantastic. But one of the things I found is I used to get complaints.
Happy customers. No one's dying.
Yeah, and
everyone's healthy. But the health is probably improving.
The health was improving, but even more than that was we never had so many compliments about how good the meat was, and we never had a single complaint. It was very common for me to get 1 or 2 customers a year where they would say, "Ah, man, everything is tough this year. Did you do something different? Like the meat was just tough." And that toughness is when the animals are scared, they get tense, right? And so that's what would happen when we were taking these animals to these abattoirs. I didn't have a single complaint about a tough steak or a tough roast for 4 years. And so it was fantastic. It was going great. We were sold out. Our customers loved it. We actually had customers come out to the farm to see their animal get harvested. Wow. Because that was our deal, was that like you're taking responsibility into your own hands. Yeah. If you be the inspector. And so we have an open door policy. I would tell our customers, look, this is the day your animal is going to be killed. If you want to be present, you're welcome to. If not, that's totally fine. And we had people come out, and it was this incredible, almost a spiritual experience to be there with an animal and see it, give its life for you, and to do it in a way where there was zero stress. Right. So our animals didn't have a single bad day in their entire lives. is amazing. And they've done research about how those stress hormones affect the chemical makeup of the meat, the nutrient density of the meat, the flavor, the texture. It's just common sense. Everybody knows this. But anyways, it was great. Couldn't ask for anything better. And then one day in July 2018, we had a black SUV pull into our driveway. Guy gets out wearing a suit, hands us a business card, and says, "Sorry, folks, I'm here from the government, and I've been told to give you a warning."
Man, and so that was it. So you guys faced up to a year in jail.
Yeah,
and $10,000 fine is what I understand.
That was the meat inspection. So I actually sat down with this guy. I said, "Look, I'm not gonna lie to you. We're doing this, but I do not believe I'm breaking the law." And I pulled out the Meat Inspection Act because I had a copy of it. I pulled out all my contracts with my customers. Mm-hmm. And I said, "You show me where I'm breaking the law. These people are producers. They own land, or they're renting land. They should have the same rights as me. How am I breaking the law?" And he said, "Well, basically word for word, if it were for up to me, you could. This is the way that everybody would do it. But I'm just doing my job, trying to protect the people." And he said that over and over and over again.
The old Nuremberg defense, just following orders.
Just following orders. Yeah. And so finally I said, because we couldn't come to terms with anything, I said, "Well, I disagree. I don't think I'm breaking the law. You think I am. What happens if I keep doing this?" And he said, "Well, from our perspective, you are breaking the law, and we'll take you to court, and that's not going to be very, expensive or fast process." So it was basically, and so I said, "All right, well, we'll think it over," and a couple days later,
where do you think this motivation came from to start enforcing this all of a sudden? Obviously, if even this government bureaucrat thinks this is BS, he's not going to go out of his way to go after you, but he's taking his marching orders from someone who wants him to. Now, what do you think that's coming from?
So the defense that he gave was, "I'm doing this for public safety. These laws are there to protect the people." But I'm going to call bullshit on that, because if it was about food safety, we wouldn't allow spinach to be brought in from California, because that's one of the biggest causes of foodborne illnesses like E. coli and stuff like that. There's no regulations for that. So the only thing I can think of is that these laws that for the Meat Inspection Act, it's not as cut and dried, because the meat lobby for beef, for example, there isn't supply management for beef. But there is supply management for pork and chicken and turkey and eggs and milk in Alberta. So basically the government tells farmers how much you can produce, at what price you can sell at, and in an attempt to control the booms and busts of the market, which doesn't work. Yeah. But so the only motivation that I can see is that these massive industry lobby groups have petitioned the government to pass laws that are in favor of their industries. So it's basically government enforced monopoly.
Yeah. Now, one of the things we were talking earlier, and you were showing me around your amazing farm and how you do things, and how everything is connected and reused and kind of recycled, and everything has a place in your ecosystem on your farm. You contrasted that to typical industrial farming, which we saw right across the road. And you pointed out an amazing fact to me, that while they're burning about 100 liters of diesel or fossil fuels, gallons, wow, they're burning 100 gallons of fossil fuels to harvest to basically harvest 1 acre, to grow and harvest 1 acre. You're spending about 2 to 4 gallons of fossil fuels per acre. And so the amount of calories in versus calories out, because calories are a measure of energy, right, directly, and they're burning more calories than they're getting out of the ground. And you pointed out that this isn't sustainable. We tried to figure out how they're still in business, and you made a good point of, well, their land equity is going up, so they're sitting on growing equity. Now, this is just to show you guys how intertwined government is in our lives, and how all these negative unintended consequences pile up. Why is that land equity growing? Well, in big part, it's because we have a government supplied money system, right? And so interest rates are set artificially low, because in a Keynesian environment, it's all about consumption, not about production. And they want you to consume things, and that means getting cheap credit. And so these land prices, real estate prices go up when our interest rates are artificially low. And so that is what's basically bolstering farms that aren't producing as much as they're consuming, essentially.
And so to take that analogy and a little bit further is, I think it was 2008 or 2009, I can't remember, but the land prices for a quarter section, which is 160 acres, was about $400,000 per quarter, which is still a lot of money.
Yeah.
And within 1 year, the land price doubled.
Wow.
It went from 400,000 to 800,000.
Right.
It blew, like nobody could figure out what the hell happened. And what happened, what we thought was there was a Hutterite colony, which is basically a cooperative of farmers. It's like 100 people or so.
Yep.
And for a long time, they were a religious organization. They were exempt from taxation.
Right.
So they've had a lot of favoring for hundreds of years. They're not anymore. But anyways, they're quite large farmers because they pool their resources. But there was one established colony in the area, and another one moved in, and we thought that's what it was, just supply and demand.
Right.
Turns out, and I haven't fact checked this myself, but I was talking with a succession consultant who used to work as an accountant for the federal government, I believe, and he informed me a little fact that just blew my mind, which was, do you know why land prices basically doubled all across Canada that year? And I said, well, no. He said, well, it's because that was the first year that the government started offering interest-only loans.
There we go. Okay.
And so basically these massive, basically cooperative farms that already had a huge advantage over small family farms were suddenly given an opportunity to basically get free money.
Right. Right.
And so this is what's happened in Europe for hundreds of years. It's the norm there. That's one of the reasons why land prices are so high there. Also, there's a lot more population, but it's just a really classic example of how government policy directly, because now these Hutterite colonies, they went and nobody here wanted to sell to these farmers because they're the worst farmers in terms of environmental damage. They don't live here. They live half an hour away. They come in, they over-fertilize, they overspray, they have no part of the community. None of the money that they make cycles back into the community, or not as much of it, and they're not community members anymore because they have a totally different ideology. And so for years, farmers had resisted their kind of colonization of our area, but when how do you say no to that?
Exactly.
And so one guy said yes, and now that's the benchmark.
Right.
So now everybody wants 800,000.
Yeah, and this is the thing is, like in a free market, in a proper free market, these farmers would be out of business because what they're doing is wildly inefficient. Like the way you're doing things, where you're only using up to 4 gallons per acre, far more calories out than you're putting in. That's profit.
Yes.
That energy differential can be reflected directly in monetary profit.
And it is, yeah.
And it is. And you have to believe that other people would be doing the exact same thing if government weren't propping up the most inefficient way of producing food ever.
Exactly.
Right? And it blows my mind. So there's so many reasons why we're cut off from having proper food that is healthy, nutritious, nutrient dense, low in inflammatory factors. Mm-hmm. It boggles my mind. We're stuck with this nutrient devoid food that has bad stuff in it. That's approved, but it's approved by the government.
Exactly. It's our agriculture is literally killing us and the planet. Like it's
right.
There's no other way to look at it. And so as a producer, when I was confronted with I've done the same research that you've done about food and everything else, and our consumers have done the same thing. And so, what do you do when the government makes it illegal to do the right thing? Is you have to break the law.
Yeah.
And I tried to do that within the means of actually signing and do my due diligence and have contracts, but they still stepped in and threatened us with jail time and fines. And so we actually had to stop because we were worried about like the consequences.
Right.
But I decided to go public with it and tell people what happened. And I've had like an outpouring of support from fellow farmers in Alberta and across Canada. And I've actually had farmers contact me to tell me that they themselves were fined and had to pay the fine of $10,000 because they were caught doing the same thing.
Right.
And so it's really like, what do you do when you're in that situation?
Well, they're trying to drive. It's like they're driving the most nutritious food out of business, and the most sustainable, regenerative, profitable food production out of business in a preference to the special interest of industrial factory farming, which blows my mind. So how can people help out? You mentioned in a video that there's some legislation coming down the pipe. Shortly, possibly.
So this has been a big issue for a lot of producers for a lot of years, and I think in the last couple years, with the case of our farm and a couple other examples, bringing this from, so like in Canada, less than 3% of the population are farmers.
Right.
As of, I think it was the 2006 census. In the 1930s, it was 33% of the population were farmers. So, and of that 3%, only a fraction of us are, kind of the regenerative, organic farmers, the small family farmers. The rest of us are, these big, basically they're industrial corporations. And so for years, the government has been favoring the 2.999% of farmers with these rulings and things like that to help them get big and play the whole export game, even though it hasn't been working. Like there's different research that shows that even though farm size has quadrupled in size, overall net realized profit has declined, year after year since basically the 1970s, I think. And so it's not working. But the thing that's really breaking the government's back on this thing is the consumer involvement. Is that we're not going to create change by getting the other 2.9% of farmers to make a difference. Yeah. It's the consumers. Right. And so as soon as myself and some other producers went to our consumers and said, look, this is what's happening. Like this, it's perfectly legal for me to drink raw milk. We had some this morning with breakfast, and it's legal for you to come into my house and have that. And
it is. Well, I was hoping I was doing something illegal when I had breakfast with you this morning, because that increases my credibility.
Sorry to break your heart.
Okay, well, I did something legal. All right.
But so it's perfectly legal for me as a producer to do that. And so in reality, like my sovereignty isn't being infringed upon. It's the consumer sovereignty.
Right.
They don't have a choice.
Yes.
The government is saying you cannot buy this food.
Yeah.
I can grow it.
Yeah.
Which is the interesting thing is like they make it logistically or bureaucratically illegal to do this stuff. But like within the Meat Inspection Act, it's illegal to transport uninspected meat. It's illegal to transport raw milk. It's not illegal to possess it.
Right.
And so when consumers, I do a lot of education and doing food workshops where I basically go out and I cook people and give them samples of all this amazing food, and they're like, oh my God, this is great. Where do I buy it? You can't. Like you and I will go to jail if I were to sell this to you. And people lose their minds, as they should.
You should lose your minds, people. Lose your minds. And here's the thing. I mean, this comes back to something called public choice theory, and in public choice theory goes like this. It says that that when profits are all the profits are in a few people, and all the costs are dispersed widely among everyone else, it's those few people that control policy, right? Yeah. So think about the dairy farmers here, guys. Yeah. Dairy farmers are making millions off supply management. It's only costing you and me an extra $1 or $2 at the grocery store. So we're not going to drive our tractors or our vehicles to Parliament and complain about $1 or $2, whereas those dairy farmers are sure as shit going to drive their tractors in a convoy to make sure they keep those millions coming in.
Yeah. And they'll bring the shit with them.
Right.
Didn't one guy actually dump on it?
That's right. They'll literally dump shit on it. But so what we need to do is get as angry as the dairy farmers get about the fact, and it's not just about saving a few dollars at the grocery store, because I want to spend more money on quality food.
Yeah.
I care about my health. I care about my children's health. I care about my grandchildren's health. I care about keeping this land sustainable and even better. Like we were talking before about how it's not just about keeping, what you're doing here isn't just sustaining a farm. You're making the land actually better with the things you're doing. It's going to become more productive, more flourishing, support more life at all levels. And I think that's an amazing thing. And I want to pay for that. Yeah. I want to pay for that. I want health. That matters to me more than that matters to me, and it should matter to you, and it should make you pissed off, and it should make you want to write letters and march and do everything else that the dairy farmers and these people that are making millions off wrecking our health want to do. Anyway, sorry, I
no, that's absolutely true, and so like this comes back to our conversation earlier, when you first got here, which was, the government is a reflection of the culture.
Right.
And it's really easy. And you know, I debated, you know, what do I do? Do I start a producer group and like lobby the government and like and try to do that, or like what's the best approach to actually create meaningful change? Because that's the goal here. And what I realized is that the best use of my energy was to educate the consumers, because the consumers are the culture, and the government is downstream from culture. And so this ironically, this isn't necessarily a government problem. Well, there's two ways to look at this. And I'm going to give the benefit of the doubt to the government and say we don't live in a fascistic, you know, dictatorship where we have no voice whatsoever. I'm going to say that the government does listen to us, and right now, the laws that are out there are. They're there either through our consent or by our apathy.
Right.
And so this comes back to the whole libertarian perspective, is like don't go and get mad at everything else. It's like get educated and demand better.
Right.
And that's how we're going to make this.
And be part of the
change.
solution. And that's what I love about what you're doing. You're taking personal responsibility for this, for the things that matter to you. I mean, touring your farm today made me want to go out and make some swales in my backyard and start, you know what I mean?
Totally.
Like that's the power of education. When people see how they can get more responsibility in their life by making a few key choices, right?
And so when we lead, the government will follow.
Right.
And so that's my particular philosophy. Now, that being said, is when the government puts their foot down to somebody who's trying to lead and who's not jumping, then you've got a problem, because now you've made it illegal to do the right thing, and it's like I have no choice but to engage in civil disobedience. And if you take me to court, then I have no choice. Like, what do I do?
It's like Martin Luther King said, you know, when the law becomes unjust and immoral, it becomes every moral man's responsibility to break the law.
Exactly.
And I think Thoreau said something similar. I mean, this is throughout history, civil disobedience is a way to point out the gun in the room and expose the government violence and coercion, right? And it can be useful. I hope it doesn't come to that, Takota.
No.
I hope people get educated and informed. And I hope you start a podcast and a video series so that people can follow you. I'm going to post whatever links you send me, because I think we want to funnel people towards the information that they can get.
Sure.
Folks, please do us a favor. Spread this video far and wide. Let people know what's going on in Canada. Educate people. Mm-hmm. We don't have a solid course of action for you. Start a permaculture farm. Talk to your local politicians. Do whatever's within your sphere of influence that occurs to you. And drop your comments below. But I'll try to put Takota's contact information. Maybe there's someone out there that can help Takota and help this food sovereignty thing. Takota, anything else you want to say? Or
well, this actually brings up, if we've got time to talk about one of the things that another Alberta farmer did himself in engaging in civil disobedience and challenging the law to see how well it's going to hold up, right? And so we got our visit from the government representative in which ironically his title was something like investigator, or like food surveillance and investigation. It was like a Orwellian title for somebody who've ever seen one. Anyway, so we got busted in July, and like 2 months later, I got a call in the middle of the night, woke me up, and didn't know who it was, and it was this guy just like frantically saying trying to explain the situation, and what had happened was that night he had been busted by the RCMP, the peace officers, Alberta Health and Safety, and like the CFI, the Canadian Food Inspection Agency, and maybe a couple other organizations for selling raw milk. So these like multiple organizations were running a sting operation on this guy and his family for like 2 years, and they raided his farm and his drop-off location at the same time with like dozens of police officers. This would have been a multi-million-dollar.
And the thing is, we're letting babies across this country drink raw milk, right off the teat, and
well, but even that, I think it's 40 of the U.S. states raw milk's legal. In Europe, you can buy raw milk in vending machines. Like there's no if you go to the Canadian website, you'll find that raw milk is labeled as like a toxic food substance, and that's why it's illegal. It's complete nonsense. I mean, you had a glass this morning. You're not dead. I've been drinking it for years. And so anyways, this guy got busted, and turns out his wife ended up, she used to be a legal aid or something for police officers.
Right.
Whenever a police officer would be charged, she would actually represent them. So she knew the legal system. So she was able to file for freedom of information and get all the documents that they've been following. The police officers were literally tailing his wife as she would drive her kids around to do groceries. They were following customers home.
Oh my God.
There was records of fellow dairy farmers that were in the area that were calling in and reporting for years. They were trying to catch this guy. They finally did after spending millions of dollars. So this guy, he started a crowdsourcing program, raised I think $30,000 for legal fees, hired a really good lawyer, and came up with a case which his whole system was based on, which is the difference between private and public law, and basically saying if two individuals decide outside of the government that they want to enter into an agreement that doesn't subject anybody else to force or fraud,
right, then
the government has no business getting involved, right, unless one of us breaches our agreement, and we can't settle it and we ask for their help. Versus the public, that's in their jurisdiction.
Gotcha.
And so
it's like a grocery store.
Yeah, if you walk into a superstore and you're buying food and you don't know where the food came from, that's the government's roles to keep you safe. Right. So this guy had entered into private contracts similar to what we did, but he was a little more familiar with the law, and he was selling foods that his customers wanted. Raw milk was the main one, and so when he walked into the courtroom a year later to plead his case, they pulled him aside and said, "Well, we decided that we weren't going to press charges."
Right. Because
there's already precedents in Canada of the differentiation between public and private law standing up, and so they stayed charges on this farmer, which the charges were $75,000 and potentially several years in prison, and so this is a really hopeful thing for me, because now we have. Because they didn't rule on it, there's not a precedent specifically for agriculture, but there are precedents for other private versus public agreements. And so I think this is a great case of how, we can still engage in civil disobedience, and we can, when the government shows us its fangs, we can not run away, and we can see that it's just a mask and there's nothing behind it. Yeah. Because and the beautiful thing about today's day and age with social media and stuff like that, and hopefully this is one of those things, is that when this stuff, people get out about how frivolously our government is spending its resources, break and entering in rural areas, and I'm sure in the cities, is rampant. Almost every one of my neighbors has been broken into, their private property has been stolen. We are not able to defend ourselves with firearms and like that, and the police don't, when you call them,
sued by the criminals if
when,
you try to...
when you call the police and say, well, my property is broken into, well, we're too busy, we can't do anything. Well, what are you busy with? You're busy chasing down consenting adults who are selling
milk producers.
Yeah, milk producers.
Jeez.
So hopefully people will become aware of this, and it'll become a catalyst. One of the interesting things that I found looking back at the different movements and where massive laws had changed is the Rosa Parks incidents, where a lot of people don't realize this, but Rosa Parks was actually, she was sitting in the right seat of the bus.
Oh, okay.
So and then the bus was full, but she was sitting in the black segregated section of the bus. A white woman got on. There was nowhere for her to sit down, so the bus driver told her to get out of her seat where she was supposed to be sitting and stand so the white woman could sit down.
Right.
That was what sparked everything, because people could just see the injustice and the insanity of that.
Right.
And from that point, I think it was just over a year from the point where Rosa said no to the point where they had repealed all of the segregation laws. Yeah. And so for hundreds of years, the slavery and all the segregation stuff had just kind of trailed on and on and on. And all it took was one event for people to put enough pressure and to lead so that the government would follow.
And that's the power of civil disobedience. Yeah. And that's been my experience too. People notice courage, right?
Yeah.
And what I always tell my candidates is get on that stage. We know our message is going to be really unpopular to people who are used to seeing things one way and immersed in a particular paradigm. But speak the truth, even with your knees knocking and your voice shaking, and people will respond, and they do, and they are receptive to that message. So if your courage ever gets you into trouble, there will be people to back you up.
Yeah.
We will spearhead campaigns. We will raise funds for your legal defense. I'm not encouraging you to be civilly disobedient, but if you do find yourself in that situation, if some Libertarian Party leader buys meat from you illegal and that sets off a chain of events, well, I'm not saying I'm not doing anything self-incriminating here. So be it. But anyways, Takota, thank you so much for taking the time. Good luck to you, and any information you forward to me, I'll post below this video, and I'm sure we'll be chatting again. Thank you, sir.
Thanks
Appreciate
so much,
it.